Can you talk about contrast? So one of the things that I find myself doing is, I believe it's step 5, when you don't get mad about,
Step 1 is ask. Contrast helps you do that. Step 2 is source answers. That's where all the cooperative components are gathered in your vibrational reality. Step 3 is you're tuned to that right now. You're in the receiving mode. So what's in there you have access to. Step 4 is you're really good at that. You're so good at that that you can do it at will. You're so good at it that you catch yourself in the early thoughts of a nightmare and you back off until the nightmare stops. And step 5 is you're really good at this. You found a new experience with some contrast in it. Really juicy awareness of what you don't want. And right in the middle of all of that, because you know how this works, you know you're launching rockets of desire, so you're not resistant to the contrast at all. In fact, you're embracing it because you know without contrast, you could not put anything together. Without contrast, you couldn't take a picture. Without contrast, you couldn't hear a word. Without contrast, you couldn't make sense of anything. Contrast is necessary.
So as my frequency goes up by either meditating or feeling the end result, does the contrast come back and become bigger?
Let's say this in another way. Since the vibration of my source energy is always up here, and since my vibration might be up here and might not, I control the contrast. If I let go of what I'm worried about and my vibration rises, then there's no contrast. But if I'm like a dog on a bone trying to fix some problem and focused upon what's wrong, then I'm introducing contrast by my introduction of my resistant thought to my own desire. How often do you want something and you believe the opposite? And what is a belief? A belief is just a thought that you continue to think. And why do you continue to think that thought? Because law of attraction keeps it active. So how do you get around that? There are a couple of ways. You could meditate, which means quiet your mind, which means the resistant thought subsides and then your vibration rises. Or you could daydream or appreciate, or you could get a lobotomy. Your choice. So your question is?
My question, I guess, was...
We have a few for you.
Good.
Do you think contrast is a good thing or a bad thing?
It's a good thing.
And since contrast is a good thing, then where'd that question come from?
Is that a trick question?
It's a really good question.
Well, I created it.
Out of your practical mind, like out of Esther's practical mind, you are evaluating scenarios. You see, Esther's trying to decide whether she should ask them to tear a big hole in the roof and put big support beams into the roof that should have been there that have never been there, and shore that roof line up and shore those smokestacks up. Or what's the path of least resistance? To shore it up or to take the smokestacks down? And what we want Esther to understand is that those are not questions that she should be asking right now, because nothing about any of those questions does anything other than introduce extreme resistance into her equation. So she thinks, I have only 2 choices. Leave them up or take them down. We say, no, there's another one. Don't think about it. That's so hard. It seems like I should think about it. It seems like I'm responsible. It seems like I should think about it. And we say, that's because you're not factoring in the fact that we're all thinking about it. You don't feel supported and guided. You don't trust that the universe is dealing with this. You haven't seen, you're not looking right now at the sequence of events that's even brought this to your attention. In other words, you're forgetting the well-being of your life experience, and you're choosing to be responsible and do the right thing. So choose this bad thought or this bad thought. There's no good scenario here. In either case, they have to make a big hole in the roof. In either case, they've got to bring a crane. In either case, great big beams have to be put into that roof line. In other words, it doesn't feel like there's any good choices from Esther's fearful place. But from our advantage point, they're all good places. Men get to play with a crane. They get to bring those cranes up there. They get to do things that they're good at doing. They get to figure stuff out. They get to work on this awesome house. They get to make a lot of money doing it. They get to please Esther. You see what we're getting at? You got to decide that you want to feel good and then find the thoughts that do feel good. And how do you know what thoughts feel good if there aren't any thoughts that don't feel good? Without resistance, how would you know? If your inner being weren't thinking a thought that is different than the thought that you're thinking, you couldn't even have negative emotion. Stay with that for a moment. If your inner being weren't knowing your success on whatever it is, then you couldn't even have negative thought. You still there? So doesn't that mean that your negative thought is proof that there is positive thought? Doesn't the very fear itself mean that there's big guns on the job? That the energy that creates worlds is really focused on this? Because if it weren't, you couldn't feel that fear. You see what we're getting at? Do you? If somebody you didn't know called you on the telephone and said, hello, you don't know me. I'm just calling to tell you that I'm never going to call you again. Would you have strong emotion about that? Who was that? Nobody. But if someone important to you said that to you, you'd feel something very different, yes? So we want you to feel that it's only when you oppose what your inner being knows about the specific subject that's active within you that you ever would feel positive or negative emotion. When you feel positive emotion, it means your inner being's all over this thought just like you are. When you feel negative emotion, it means your inner being's all over this thought but has a very different vantage point than yours. Don't you like knowing that? And don't you want to guide yourself? So here's more questions for you.
Okay.
You can sort of speak on behalf of all of them. He'll do a good job for you. Do you feel blessed enough to let yourself feel good?
Absolutely.
Do you believe that in struggle or suffering or sacrifice that anyone is benefiting?
Yes, because it creates contrast.
Beyond that, in the moment, in other words, in the moment of the struggle and the suffering?
No.
So it brings awareness, and it could help you to guide your thought, but there's no practical value in pinching yourself off from the energy that creates worlds that is already all over your project. Yes?
Yes.
That would be like, and you've lived this, so picture this. The men have arrived. They brought their crane. It's enormous. It's high in the sky. There are men sitting in the cabin of the crane. There are men on the roof receiving the big chain that's coming down. Everyone's in place, and they are so good at this. And then Esther's standing there yelling, "Watch out! Be careful!" Don't hook it up like that! Don't fall off the roof! They'd kind of like her to go away, wouldn't they? Is she hindering the cause? Is she helping the cause? And so you sort of get the point. So why would someone like Esther, why would she do that? Why would she do that? Only if she thinks she knows better. If she doesn't trust the men on the roof, or if she doesn't trust the crane. But you can trust the men on the roof. You can trust the non-physical in the sky. You can trust your non-physical counterparts. You can trust the worthiness of your being. You can trust the blessedness of your being. You can trust that things are working out for you. You can just decide whether you want to help or hinder. And we just want you to go in the house. Or better still, leave town for a while. We just want you to get out of the way of the well-being that's happening on your behalf. We want you to be less involved in fixing things and more involved in trusting that well-being is happening. Yes? So did we get there, or is there something else you wanted to chew over?
You know, it's amazing. I mean, it doesn't really matter what you say. Your words, in a way, don't mean anything to me. Just being in your presence and feeling your vibration right now is amazing. Like, you could be just, you know, talking a different language, and I feel you 100%, and I'm feeling so good and so happy to be with you right now. I love you so much. Thank you.
Before you go, so that's what tuning into your inner resources is about. And maybe we coaxed you there with words that you felt resonance with. Maybe you were just ready to go there because you came to this gathering expecting to be called on and expecting to have this experience. But it is this positive expectation that we wish for all of you. We want you to trust when you get there, all things are possible for you. All things are possible under these conditions.
I knew 100 million% that I'm going to be the first person here today. I visualized myself in this room right now. I mean, I even told some friends that I met yesterday, and they can attest to that. And I was just...
Did he tell you that? Yeah. This is a really good time for a segment of reflection.
Thank you so much.